Hello, and welcome to Why I Love Warhammer, the series where I go into a borderline unscripted ramble into why I love something in this hobby. And on this episode, it's going to be the Adeptus Mechanicus. So, I've got Belisarius Cawl here on the first slide, but before I get into any of the model ranges, I just want to talk more generally about the Adeptus Mechanicus, because there are a few things to love about them that aren't necessarily part of the models range. First one is there's the video game Mechanicus. I bought it for myself Christmas Day a couple of years ago on Nintendo Switch. And I gotta tell you, as much as I love Dawn of War, as much as I love the Total War Warhammer, as much as as much as I did actually enjoy Tau Fire Warrior on the PlayStation 2 back in the day, I've never played a video game which captured the essence of the tabletop game to me more than Mechanicus. You're taking turns, you're moving units around, the units have strengths, weaknesses, etc. There's an investment cost to them. It's just a brilliant game with an amazing soundtrack. When I was looking at the idea of putting music into these videos, all I really wanted to do was to use the track Children of the Omnissiah to play in the background of these, and I thought that if I do that, then the people who watch these videos will think I'm copying another YouTuber who shall not be named. But if you listen to a certain lore-based YouTuber who has a Space Wolf themed username, who is one of my favourite people in this community, you'd understand why I'm not going to steal his music gimmick. It's just a beautiful soundtrack that really works well, an amazingly fun game. As a Necron fan, I got the best ending where the Necrons win, although in terms of gameplay mechanics, it is the worst ending. The other thing with the Mechanicus that I really like, again as a Necron fan, is okay, let's rewind a little bit. For those who don't know the Adeptus Mechanicus that well, the Adeptus Mechanicus originate from Mars, and they worship a god they call the Omnissiah, the machine god. They have a bit of an uneasy alliance with the Imperium of Man, because the Imperium say the Emperor is God. The Emperor is the only true God. And a powerful enough subset of the Adeptus Mechanicus said, well, the Omnissiah and the Emperor are the same. So when we say we worship the Omnissiah, we're referring to your Emperor of Mankind. Because, now, I don't think it literally happened this way, but the way it seems to happen in my memory of reading about this is the Emperor came to Mars, there was a broken piece of machinery, the Emperor whacked it like he was the Fonz in Happy Days, and it started working again. So the Adeptus Mechanicus went, yes, this is the Omnissiah, the machine god. But there are theories, and this is me as a Necron fan, that actually the Omnissiah is a Satan shard of the Void Dragon that is sat within the centre of Mars. And so bringing those in together, I really like as well. And given that there's a bit in the lore that the Silent King of the Necrons wanted to work with Sanguinius and the Blood Angels and Commander Dante of the Blood Angels, it suggests that there are multiple paths to an alliance. I sometimes like to think about what would Warhammer 50k look like, and part of that imagination is the Necrons and the Imperium work together, and the Adeptus Mechanicus are one way in which I kind of envision that happening. To be clear, I don't necessarily want 50k to happen, but it's just one I like to imagine. It's a thing that I like to imagine it. I'd be terrified if they announced Warhammer 50k. But then the other thing I like with the Adeptus Mechanicus as just an overall concept is that they still have technology that, even though it's really old, relatively speaking, in universe, it's still more interesting, I think, than a lot of what the Imperium has. Okay, so let's get to some models and characters. Let's start with Belisarius Cawl. And for him, he is this twisted abomination. Like, his legs are down here, but they're going all the way up to here. His face looks really weird and contorted. He's got pipes everywhere. The belly looks like, if you've ever seen Howl's Moving Castle, it looks a bit like Howl's house. That, at least it reminds me of that. This weird axe with the spikes on one end. It looks more like a machine component than it does a weapon. He's got these, cybernetic tentacles coming out of everywhere. This spider-like foot that's dragging him along. He's standing on a book. The red cloth. I do love the cloth the Ad Mech have. There's something about it that it feels ceremonial for a machine-like race. And I just think it's just incredible. And one thing that I think works well in the Adeptus Mechanicus favour is you look at a model like this and you don't know where to look. There's no centre of focus. Is your eye drawn to his face? Is your eye drawn to the stomach? Is your eye drawn to the weapon? Is it drawn to this top piece? Is it drawn to this caterpillar-like bridal veil-like cloak? It's a confusing model to look at, and I think that adds something to the character of the model. And I can't not love it. And from Belisarius Cawl, from a lore perspective, there are, if you think about it too hard, if you were to think about it very critically, Belisarius Cawl being set up to start the Primaris project has a few holes. I'm not gonna I'm here to talk about what I love about this hobby. There are some things that don't make sense. I won't harp on about them. But I do like the idea of having an inbuilt lore reason to have a bit of a range refresh for the Space Marines. The stock, I do love a good firstborn. I like the stockiness of them. But if you're going to do a range refresh, if you take that as read that there's going to have to be a range refresh, having an inbuilt lore reason for it, I do like. It also means that you could have... It kind of has a justification to have more Space Marines coming in. It also... one thing I like with it as well is the idea of having all of the gene seed of all of the Primarchs. Maybe my boy Comrade Kurz is... There's a little bit of Comrade Kurz gene seed in all of the Primaris Marines. Maybe there's a little bit of Horus in them, the arch trait. Maybe there's a little bit of Fulgrim. It then links in with the ideas of kind of clone Fulgrim as a potential thing to come back to the setting. I think that, yeah, there are certain things about Belisarius Cawl's place in the story that I think have enormous positive storytelling potential. Yeah, so I think that Belisarius Cawl represents a lot that's good for the hobby. I enjoy the arguments he'd had with Guilliman in some of the more recent books. I just think he's just a really cool character, and whenever I fantasize about making an Adeptus Mechanicus list, whenever I think about it, the first thing I do is I say, okay, Belisarius Cawl in list Warlord. He's the must include as far as I'm concerned. Okay, next. Castellan robots. Okay, whenever I make a fantasy Ad Mech list, I start with Belisarius Cawl, and then I load up the Castellan robots to be as many as I can. I'm a sucker for AI in fiction. I think I think it's just a really interesting story, and I love the Castellan robots. They remind me of Robbie the Robot from Lost in Space. I think that the design is really cool. I love this faceplate. Also, if anyone subscribes to Warhammer Plus, there's a Hammer and Bolter episode which features the Adeptus Mechanicus, and it's a Castellan robot and one tech priest walking through this wasteland. And I think that it's a really, like, I welled up at that. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend to be all stoic and manly about it. No, I was on the verge of tears with that story. I thought it was really well told, and the Castellan robot in that was the, with that, the dynamic between the robot and the tech priest, I thought worked brilliantly. So yeah, I love that from the storytelling perspective, and yeah, like I say, I think they're kind of cute, and there's nothing wrong with wanting a cute looking model, even in a very, very grim, dark setting. So normally when if I construct a fantasy ad mech list, it goes Belisarius Cawl, as many Castellan robots as could fit in. Like, if they ever made these a troops choice or a battle line choice, I'd go even more overboard with the Castellan robots. These Skitarii riders, I do like the Skitarii. Again, they just kind of look the most robotic to me, and I like how they have. I like how they're riding some kind of steed. It makes them seem like cowboys. One thing I really like that this hobby does is it finds two things that you don't necessarily think should work together and makes them work together very well. So, kind of the Kroot gave me Native American Indian vibes. And then they make the elves into pirates. They make the orcs into kind of into kind of scrap builders, but also into kind of these kind of primitive squig hog riders. And they take the robot enthusiast faction, the faction that says, from the moment I understood the weakness of my flesh, and they turn them into cowboys. That's cool. And they've got these cowboy horses that are riding around, and they're all they're all kind of got these cybernetic enhancements to them. But that's cool to me. And the way they ride around, they've got these kind of old westerny rifles. Like, you can't tell me that's not awesome. And again, the horses have these slightly scary teeth. The eyes, okay, this is a reference within itself. The eyes remind me of the 10th boss in Shadow of the Colossus, the sandworm dirge. There's something about the eyes staring vacantly like that just remind me of that Colossus. What a game! But again, we'll save other properties for a different another time. This is the Adeptus Mechanicus, and I love these horses. I love these eyes. I love the teeth. They're really weird teeth. Again, just the Skitarii. I like the kind of cybernetic nature of them. How robotic they are. They are, they seem like they've combined. They've replaced the most of their bodies with robotics, with cybernetics as possible, and I think that just looks really cool. I don't have it on here, but when they announced the Skitarii model on the massive stilts, I loved that for similar reasons. It's just weird and ridiculous and so enhanced that I just can't not adore it. Transport, something about this just makes it seem like it kind of floats. It reminds me of the big tanker ship in Star Wars: A New Hope, where Luke goes to purchase R2-D2 and C-3PO. It just reminds me of that, and I just think it's a cool looking vehicle. And I like this guy just pointing. There's something about it that just tickles me. And it's one of those things that, because it doesn't have a closed roof, it feels like you're incentivized to paint the inside more. I've got a Rhino. I've got a Rhino that I didn't bother painting the inside of. I just didn't feel like it was necessary. And even with my Cerastus Knight Lancer, I did paint the inside, but only as a bunch of in-jokes and references that only I'd ever see, because you never really see the inside of these models. But when it's got an open top like this, it does incentivize that. Gyrocopter, they remind me of the Ornithopters in Dune. It's just a really cool looking helicopter, but with flapping wings. It's got these kind of talons that I really like as well. Makes it seem like it's a bird of prey. I'm also just personally a sucker for any kind of clear plastic that goes on in a model. It just makes it feel really believable. And again, this thing seems to be built with kind of pulleys and stuff. Like there's a kind of a metal rope here that I just think works really well. And there's something about it that makes it feel like you don't need to understand how electronics work to understand how this thing flies. I'm sure if you delved into the science of it, if you did the maths, then it probably couldn't fly in our world. But it looks believable enough where suspension of disbelief becomes easy. I didn't use too much for this model. There was a video uploaded by a user called Paul is bad at stuff that pointed out this model to me with how horrifying this dude is. This guy in the front who's been like permanently attached into this thing. He's never going to be able to escape. He's just there as a viewfinder. He's got no armor. And that made this model so much cooler to me. Like I do like this massive lance / cattle prod that he's got going on. I do enjoy the walker aspect of it, but it's this guy in the front that made this one of my favourite models in the Adeptus Mechanicus range. These Skitarii, these were my go-to unit for the Mechanicus video game, and I just think they look really cool. I love the melee focus. The legs look really weird to me. They're like bird legs with the kind of the backwards knees. Just a fantastic model. And again, if I'm ever making a fantasy Adeptus Mechanicus list, I'm piling in as many of these guys as I can. I just think these marshals look cool, and I like the Ad Mech axes and the servo skulls. From a lore perspective, servo skulls are horrifying, but they add a little something to a model. They just add a bit of flavour to it. And again, this kind of arm thing, can't not love that. These guys, they're here because they remind me of the Lord of Skulls in the World Eaters range, with the overall shape and the treads. But these guys just look horrifying to me. These are... I say horrifying in a good way, because if you imagine these coming towards you, that would be terrifying. And there's something about the overall image of them that's just deeply disconcerting in a way that makes sense for an army that's all about replacing their organic material with cybernetic enhancements. Again, your tech priest, kind of like Belisarius Cawl, but not quite as much. He's got the cloak, he's kind of got these claws underneath him, carrying him around. He's got his human arm, or her human arm, is just carrying stuff. It's the cybernetics that carry the weapons and deal the damage. These fluids going on, I just think that's just a really awesome thing. And these guys, I don't understand these guys. They look like they're psychers, but they're kind of got electronic parts to them. It's kind of like shock collars at every aspect. Deeply disconcerting in the absolute best way for this hobby. This thing, it's a spider crawler. It's a big robot crab, you know, and I like me a robot crab in my war game. And then yeah, these guys, again, big wings. I just think they look cool, and I'm a sucker for the Skitarii stuff in the Ad Mech range. And yeah, this guy kind of It's kind of like the Tech Priest, but a little bit less. He's got some more of his organic elements to him. Now, I couldn't do this without talking a little bit about the dark Mechanicum. So, for those who aren't aware, in the lore, during the Horus Heresy, everything kind of split off from one another. So there were loyalist and traitor from the Marines, from the Guard, and the Mechanicum. And the Dark Mechanicum have just so much potential to them. And this guy skews me out in the best way. It just looks horrifying. Same for this one, that is kind of floating on a giant ship. And so yeah, there's kind of more than one way to build and play or Ad Mech. And I think, but yeah, just let's circle back a bit, because I just think that when it comes to the Adeptus Mechanicus, there's so much to love with them. There's what they represent lore-wise from both the Norm Adeptus and Dark Mechanicum, and they're what they bring to the table storytelling-wise with Belisarius Cawl and the gene seed from all the different Primarchs is something to behold. And the kind of the nature of AI, the cybernetics, the kind of enhancements, it's all just really fascinating, and they're really cool models, these kind of religious engineers. There's so much about the Adeptus Mechanicus to love. And with that, I'll bid you adieu. I will say comment question of the day: what is your favourite faction from a lore perspective? Like, which faction do you think brings the most to the table from a lore perspective? And with that, if you want to do the YouTube niceties, liking, subscribing, that'd be great. Still trying to get this channel to 2,000 subscribers, which would be brilliant. And if we can get in trying to up the amount of watch hours in these videos as well, that'd be phenomenal too. And yeah, with that, I will say see you later. Have a good day.